My guest today is Hafimi Abdul Haadi, Executive Director of the LVK Group of Companies. Hafimi's story began in Brunei, enriched by experiences in New Zealand and Australia during her formative years. Hafimi was a member of the Legislative Council of Brunei Darussalam from 2017 to 2022, where she made significant contributions. Hafimi's dedication to fostering entrepreneurship shines through her leadership at the Young Entrepreneurs Association of Brunei and her active role in the ASEAN-China Young Entrepreneurs Forum. Hafimi serves on several boards in Brunei, Australia, and Uganda, and extends her expertise by advising Abudu in Ireland. While her background lies in architecture, Hafimi's adaptability and commitment to learning propelled her into diverse fields, including banking, statutory administration, and competition law. Join me as we explore Hafimi's intriguing journey, how she forged meaningful relationships and earned a seat at the table. Her story truly is a testament to exceptional networking skills, adaptability, and a dedication to lifelong learning. Hi, Hafimi. A very warm welcome to Atlanta Diaries.
Good day. Nice to meet you again.
So you're back from a long trip in San Francisco. Tell us, what was this whole trip about?
So I was attending the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting Week. It's a culmination of a year's work as a member of the APEC Business Advisory Council called ABAC, and I've been a member now for the past 11 years. So ABAC is an integral part of the whole APEC process. It's basically the Asia-Pacific Economic Community.
Yes.
It's made up of economies as opposed to countries. So in essence, it's a year of work for us as ABAC members, but also with our counterparts in APEC, where we spend this week in San Francisco having a series of dialogues, discussions. So this year, the host is the US, and we were hosted for these events by our ABAC chair from the private sector, and then obviously as the APEC chair, President Biden.
So what were the key highlights, Hafimi? What were your key takeaways from the trip?
So this year, ABAC's thematics were equity, sustainability, and opportunity. That was the thematic that the ABAC chair built around this particular piece of work that we've done over the year. And at the same time, our APEC colleagues, looked at resilience, digitalization. How do you actually use the Asia-Pacific region to uplift the community? And that's really been a big part of what I've been doing, I guess 10 years of not as my day job. I mean, this is essentially a national service type of role, but also understanding the importance of having, these type of conversations to affect change. Ultimately, we're all trying to uplift each other from a community's perspective and, contributing towards the community. And I guess that harks back to my first interactions with APEC, I would say like 23 years ago, as a member of the APEC Business Advisory Council. Our Brunei Young Entrepreneur Association was set up when Brunei hosted the APEC year. And that's put a pretty big imprint on my life's journey, especially from an entrepreneurial perspective, and also trying to do good and be a good role model for young people in Brunei. When we initiated this association, it was really more like a coffee club. A lot of us spent a greater part of our time educated overseas, living overseas. And when we came back to Brunei, it was just friends saying, hey, why don't we meet regularly, right? Why don't we try and help each other within our own businesses? Some of us started our own business. Some of us actually just became part of family businesses, and some of us became professionals in their own right. And essentially it was, trying to understand how we could help each other without having to use our own connections in a very small community. And we were also a very diverse group from, different cultural backgrounds, different occupational backgrounds. And really the culmination of it was just a very simple conversation with the chairman of a committee. And he says, hey, why don't you guys just formalize this and make this an actual real organization instead of just your usual coffee club? So I think that whole contribution or that whole engagement with community, especially on the ground in Brunei, was quite a crucial part of my career, but in a way also the ability of having connections with other parts of the business community outside of your own circle. That enabled the association, and And that led to a lot of trust with our governmental side, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade at the time to the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports. They put trust in the association and the members of the association to run events. It's, one of our biggest that we were tasked to manage and run and curate was the Asia Europe Young Entrepreneurs Leadership event. And in a way, the association was paid money for it. But, being entrepreneurial, we didn't use that money to pay for everything. We got everything else sponsored. So we had a little kitty of about, tens of thousands just to put away and use it to run the organization. Fast forward a couple of years after that, and being part of helping set up a lot of other ASEAN Young Entrepreneur groups and networks. So as of 23 years later, very proud to say that as a co-founder, the organization has grown a lot. We have seen members participate in economic activity in Brunei and also beyond.
Wow, so many insights in one answer. And somewhere down the line said that this is not my day job, right? How are you navigating so many different roles? Like, it's quite clear that there is a deeper purpose which probably fuels your life journey or your pursuits. So, what's the overarching commitment that's guiding this path?
I tend to compartmentalize a lot of things. I guess doing different things on different days would help from a first perspective. I'm pretty fortunate because I am in an industry that's sort of fairly mature. I'm a second generation business owner from that perspective, serving second generation clients. So as long as we maintain costs, we look at, operationally, it's a day in, day out. Doesn't take up a big chunk of my week, I guess, which gives me other chances or other slots to do other things. I firmly practice a belief of not having meetings on Mondays. So that allows me to clear, my own personal stuff that I would have to do in my own time. It gives me an ability to think about what we want to hammer out during the week. But on the other hand, I also work when I need to work, as opposed to, doing a 9 to 5. I've had the fortune of working on very interesting projects over time. And these projects may not necessarily be related to my own training. The existing company is a maintenance and project company. And, we also get together with like-minded souls in the region and internationally to just think of things and how things could work for whatever other reason. So strategic advisory and consultancy has become a tangent or an offshoot of what I've been exposed to. And I enjoy doing that. So I wouldn't call my work a job. It's work, but it's also work that is fulfilling. But as you had asked, when I was a legislative council member, I probably had a lot more hats than I do now. I don't have a neck, because of the multiple hats. But I think you learn to manage, to be honest with you. And I think, by having several balls in the air, you also can find a way to link them all. They're not always necessarily on their own. Eventually, you find an area or an industry or a pathway that you enjoy doing. So I sleep very efficiently. I probably go to bed about midnight and I'm up at about 5 in the morning. And I remember an intern that had started with me and I would be shooting off emails probably about 6. And he actually thought, do I have to reply this straight away? I said, no, because, I'm awake already and I've got things that are formulating in my own mind, what I need to get off my chest. But we don't expect others to, as they say, work at the same pace. But I've enjoyed the past decade with its intensity and obviously its various own challenges. But that in itself is also one of the characteristics, I guess, that I've had to endure my whole life. I am, as what you would label, a challenge-oriented person. That was actually why I did architecture, because I was told when I was like in grade 11 by a careers counselor, oh no, your grades are terrible. There's no way that you'll be able to do architecture, even if that's what you wanted. So it came down to, okay, you know what, I'm gonna do this and I will bring this degree back to you by hook or by crook. And I did it, after 6 years.
I'm just curious to know that why did the whole conversation around architecture even come up in your meeting with the career counselor?
Well, my late father has an interior design and a design company. So it was just one of the various things that I was interested in doing. But I think ultimately doing the degree was really just to prove a point to someone that it can be done. So yeah. So most of my friends would actually say, okay, don't dare her to do anything.
So, what are these challenges and what's your coping strategy? Love to hear some anecdotes around it.
I guess it's a trajectory. What's
Yeah.
an ultimate goal that you want to achieve? Pretty much a project oriented type of approach to doing what I do. I don't have a day in, day out job whereby, oh, okay, you just come in, you clock it, you do this, you do that. So if we're going to go build something, or if we're going to come up with a proposal for someone, there's always an end game to it. And that gives you focus. So it's like, okay, set the task, understand how to undertake it, and then just work through the task, right?
Hmm.
Not every task has its same reward, or even if you've spent a lot of time on it, you may not even achieve the goal. So then the challenge back to you is, when do you actually step away from it, or when do you actually can it and say, you know what, this is not going to work anymore. We've tried our best. We've extended as much investment into it, and just walk away from it and not let that affect you. So I think
Mm.
that's been a coping mechanism. Don't take it to heart. And I actually learned this a lot when I was in university, because you could be up for months on end trying to do a project or a design or whatever, and then the lecturer comes in and goes, "This is all rubbish. I don't understand it. Start again." So you sort of just say, "You know what? Yeah, okay, just deal with it and move on. Have a bit of a cry in the corner if you want, but how do you wipe the slate clean and move on?" So I think I've been trained to use that type of coping mechanism. Don't get attached to stuff, because stuff goes away.
That's a great perspective. So, I can draw a lot of parallels because I'm born to a business family. So, coming into a business family comes with a lot of challenges, comes with a lot of expectations, right? And then from there, you segued into community work, you segued into, global work. So, how did others understand that you will still be able to do justice to your job and yet do justice to other things?
I think first and foremost, I didn't do this on my own. I think that's very important to clarify. I think the influences around growing up from a very young age within a business family per se is always very important. So my grandparents were very strong influence in my life, not just my own parents, from a community's perspective, because they would always do charity work. So from a very young age, you're sort of taught to do these things. It just becomes second nature. You don't
Mm.
actually have to be asked to do that, to help each other out. I remember when my grandparents had a variety of different companies, some in travel, some in floristry. And when things were busy, we would be tasked to help around the business, whether it was in the flower shop, helping just trim the ends of the stems to put them into water. But we looked at that as fun, right? We didn't think of it as a chore. So I think that element of it would be part of your journey that you don't get taught. You're just surrounded by these business elements and this method of just interacting. My late grandfather always said that if you're also in business and if you don't make a profit, then you might as well just do it for charity. So no matter how much money, you just got to make money, right? At the same time, I guess whether there was an intrinsic feeling of, okay, am I obligated to come back? I don't think that was there. I am the oldest in my family. And I just knew that it was an interesting company to go into. And I came in from the bottom up. I didn't just step into an executive job. I was sent to various segments of the company, all the way from understanding what the staff do, what the tradespeople do, being out in the sun, being in the stockroom, trying to arrange stuff for a month. So we had to earn the respect of the staff, because just because you're the owner's daughter doesn't mean you get first dibs on everything. You've got to actually earn your stripes in an organization. And I think that was a very important life's journey for me. At the same time, I had good mentors around me, not just the people that have been there for the longest time, from my late father, just a lot of people around who would give you advice. I think that's crucial, because at the end of the day, no matter what your business, right, or no matter the organization, you need to earn your role in the organization. At the same time, also, when you're put in a position where somebody says to you, hey, you know what, you're going to be in charge, I'm going to step back, but I'm always there if you need help. So I think that was very important because there was a very conscious decision for my late father to actually step back from the executive role. But he would always be around because no good organization can move forward if it has two masters, right? You either play the role or you don't play the role. It's very straightforward because the last thing you want is to confuse your employees. It doesn't mean that mistakes don't get made, but at least at the end of the day, you've also got somebody that you can talk to about it and sort of work your way through it. We went through a very tough time when I secured in a role of an ED or even an MD type of role. We were just emerging out of financial crisis, the 99 financial crisis, and Brunei got it a little bit later than everybody else. So, you can imagine trying to reconsolidate your organization, letting go staff, staff that have been there from when you were growing up and have been with the company for the longest time. So, that was a very painful part of my own career progression because it was essentially, talking to each and every one of the staff to say, hey, look, I can't afford to pay you anymore. Either I reduce your salary and we can try and drag it on, or we can rip the Band-Aid and say, look, I'll give you severance. I mean, I'll be very frank to you. I was 27 years old, having to do this. I don't know if other people get that same exposure that I did, but it's a very hard lesson to go through. Okay. So whenever I speak to people now, it's like, so what do you actually do? I said, my first job is sales, sales and everything, regardless of what my industry is. Because to do all these things, you have to convince someone that your value is more than what they actually need and what they want. So there's a lot of lessons there that nobody teaches you in university, put it that way. You have to live it.
Yeah, it's a very humbling experience, and it's an experience which probably everyone should go through. So only then you have empathy for the other person also.
Yeah. I reckon that's a course that a civil servant needs to go through, to be very honest with you, because you don't understand how it feels to be in somebody else's shoes, especially when you're in a position of power per se, right? So I guess if I were to translate that when I was a member of the legislature, it allowed me, because I had that experience, number one, to relate to an audience. Number two, to be able to translate government policy to the user, to the community that we serve. And then number three, also how to bridge the gap. So I think that's something that's very difficult to learn unless you've actually experienced it. But that's where I am, and that's what I've gone through. Put it this way.
Talk to us about this transition, Hafimi. Like, how did you transition from being this architect and third generation business person to becoming a member of the Legislative Council? What triggered this significant shift in your career path?
Oh, easy. It was by command of His Majesty. I don't really have a choice. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't think it's whether or not you have a choice. I think upon the realization that the appointment was announced on national television, first thing that sort of came to mind is, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? Second point was, oh, I need to do this in our local language as opposed to English, right? I only studied local language till grade 9. Okay. So I'll go through these emotions, but at the same time also stepping up, right? Like I said to you earlier, right? I'm a challenge oriented person. And I try and keep things as positive. If there must be a reason why the appointment was done, I shouldn't be looking back as to, oh, do I deserve this? Don't I deserve this? Da da da. I try and learn as much as I can, make it in my own manner, but also stick to my guns. A lot of people go through these processes and they try to adapt as to what is perceived to be the role. Look, if I'm appointed based on my experiences and based on what I've done in the past, then why should I be changing myself for the role, right? Because then it wouldn't be me, it wouldn't be genuine. So I don't think I changed from that perspective because, it's not a full-time job being a legislative council member. So I could still do my business, and I just have to ensure that I don't have conflicts of interest wherever I was. So that actually allowed me to pivot more and do more internationally as opposed to locally, because I didn't want to have any connotations that, it was because of the position that you would get, get this particular project. So I think it was my own way of reconciling with my conscience that I would do things in the right manner, that I was appointed to serve the community a little bit more than, just looking at what I do in my own career. And I can always do that in other locations anyway. So that allowed exposure in global and international business, if you were to put it that way.
Tell us more about that. So you said it was announced on national TV?
So I didn't see any of that. I was at a private dinner at an ambassador's home with his wife and a friend who was visiting Brunei at the time. And the phone kept buzzing and ringing and all this. I mean, we were having dinner. You're not going to go and answer the phone, right? But after maybe about 50 or 60 rings or whatever, you thought, okay, maybe the sky is falling. I sort of need to go and figure out what's going on. Had to excuse myself and then looked at the phone. All these congratulatory messages were coming through. And I'm like, okay, what did I do? So that was the first thing that popped to mind. Mentioned to the ambassador, and I said, I think I've been appointed to something. So, that type of thing. So obviously lots of congratulations around the table, and then trying to catch up with people after I left the dinner going, okay, so what does a legislative council member do? Having to learn. So if in anything I've always done is preparation is very crucial. A lot of due diligence is required no matter what the task. So that level of preparation is necessary so that when you go into something, you're sort of all eyes in, right? But yeah, in Brunei, we have this uniqueness of appointments being just announced on television. And then it's like, oh, surprise! That time.
So why do you think you were given this position? What part of your personality do you think made this appointment happen?
So I got that appointment when I became the president of the Young Entrepreneur Association. So whether it was interrelated, I can't tell you really off the hand, but the timings were pretty much coincidental. And then the following 1 year of doing the APEC Business Advisory Council, I also was a host of the ASEAN-China Business Forum in Brunei. It was the 5th edition. So I guess the natural progression of things. So you go from a purely national level to a regional level, and then eventually, hopefully, to a global level. So the stepping stones of learning would have been obviously in all of these organizations. And these are NGOs. These are not paid organizations in the sense. You do it because you feel that you have a skill to bring to the table. You have a network that you can bring together. And at the same time, you feel that you have something that you want to convey to the government that says, look, certain things need to change. I've also been very fortunate because I can talk to anyone in a way. I'll sit next to someone on a train and I'll have a conversation with them probably by the end of the journey and know their life story. so I think I've been very lucky in that sense. And I don't think that it was just by default. I think you learn as you go. Then obviously your confidence is there. You know what to do with it. And you know how to direct the conversation. And obviously coming out of COVID, that ability to interact is a little bit short now, especially with young people. The capability or even the opportunity to allow interaction was reduced because we're human beings that require some element of communication. And communication then carries and drives the message that you're trying to convey, right? No matter what. You can type as many things as you like, but nothing beats having good communication approach in closing that deal, in enabling somebody to understand where you're coming from, convincing them that this is the approach that should work. So again, back to what I said earlier, right? My first job is sales.
This is very interesting, Hafimi. And, given that your deeper purpose is about uplifting other entrepreneurs, in a sense, it's a loss of financial independence, or have you sort of given up on your own career path?
No. I mean, at the end of the day, to do these things or to do whatever you need to do, you need to have money. If you look at all the biggest endowments in the world, it's always got money behind it because you can't be helping somebody if you're also thinking about your own problems, right? You got to solve your own problems first and make sure you come from a slightly stable positioning to help other people. Like I said, I've been very blessed. I come from a relatively okay family background, from a financial level, from a community level. But at the same time, I also work hard. I mean, I don't think I don't work hard. I mean, I feel that if I need to do something, I have to put the effort into it. But I'm not having to think about it on a day-to-day basis, right? So I'm fairly blessed in that approach. But at the same time, I don't take it for granted that it's always got to be there. So like I said, we have one child, we have a 22-year-old, but he was taught the value of money from a very early age. And it's about work and reward. I think that part of it needs to be there. Otherwise, you can't really do what you need to do. At the same time, if somebody asks you for help, I don't think you've ever come across anyone who would say, no, I'm not going to bother helping you. And I think that's just been in the environment that I've grown up with. So there's always been that sense of purpose and sense of service. Where I grew up in Australia, the boarding school that I once went to also had this key element of the school's motto, whereby service is a big part of of daily life. So whether that's ingrained, innate, or because of many years of generational exposure, it's always been there. Yeah. For the longest time, I would always get, can you help? That would be the opening stanza when somebody texts you, right? Oh, I'm calling you because I need a bit of help. Yeah, okay. What do you need help for?
You said you were the eldest of the siblings, right? So are your other siblings also part of the same business, or are you the only one who's taken over the family business?
Yeah, I'm the only one that really had a good interaction within the company. The rest just decided to do their own thing. There was no real pressure for anyone to be part of the business. I think it's always nice that parents want to have their children involved, but there wasn't a ultimatum to say, no, you need to finish your education, come back and be part of the business. There's no necessity that it has to have that particular person's surname to continue the leadership level of the company.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I was curious to know, how did you take it forward?
For this particular company, it's not just second generation leadership in this company, but we also manage second generation clients. And I think that in itself is because of the ability to have good trust and openness with the clients. Whether I've done the role in a different manner, I think it changes, as opposed to when the company was set up, it was more on project delivery, design, build, getting something, client asks for something, get it done and move on. Whereas this is more of a bit more of a hand holding, because you're having to do maintenance. You're having to encourage the client to expend on certain things, even though they don't see that it has to be expensed, and trying to relate it back to them that, okay, if you spend this much, you've got to do an extension of the longevity of the asset, whatever. I look at things in a slightly different manner, because my late father was a businessman. Whether he was entrepreneurial, his bread and butter was as a businessman. Open companies, closed companies, that's what it was. Whereas I look more on opportunities beyond what the company can do, but actually taking them into different industries. So the template may be the same, but the industry would be different. So that sort of style is obviously much more different from a first generation or even the second generation. In certain companies, I am third generation. So whether or not we see these companies surviving beyond sort of my level, we're not sure yet. We don't know. Because these are small companies. These are not big companies, but these are companies that work because there is still a need for that role. We're not multinational. We're not out to be a multinational. I think we're happy just doing what we do for our particular set of clients. But who are we to decline a business when somebody comes up to you and say, hey, we want you involved in this business? So I've had the good fortune of having a lot of good friends,
Yeah, that's very interesting. Sounds like as the need arose, you grew your business, said no to nothing and took on more and more.
I've taken on a couple of roles now with international companies, like companies outside of Brunei. Whether it started off from an advisory role, I think it was more due to the relationship building, and either the founders or the investors or people linked to these companies felt that, it was a good fit to have me there to guide the company through certain phases. So it's essentially they want you for two things. I mean, why do companies hire you for, right? Number one is you have a very good network and you have people that they want to connect to. Number two is you have the ability to bring yourself into the company and be the lead spokesman. As I said before, I am in sales. So if I'm on your side, I would be pushing to death, wanting to have people to know more and more about your company. So really, it's very straightforward for me, because the fact that somebody needs you involved in their organization because they know that you can allow them to access other people on a quicker level or in a more intimate level compared to if they were to go and door knock and cold call, other people. So the power of having a very strong, reliable, and effective network is always of benefit when you deal with, I guess, me.
I understand. So are these multinationals or are these also local companies?
Actually, some are local companies, and a couple are either startup or scale up level companies in Australia. So I sit on the board of two companies in Australia. I sit on the board of one company out of Ireland. I'm also an investor in a company in Hong Kong. A lot of the time, it's formed because of friendships, because either the founder, an investor in the company, or somebody that just needs your help for a certain period of time in the life of the company. And then you just stick it out and then see how you can push that along. So I've sat in a whole variety of boards, I think, for the past 6 to 7 years with various areas from banking to statutory administration, competition law. I'm not a lawyer, nor am I an economist. And I've had to learn all these things along the way. I read a lot.
So what's your go-to place for picking up all these learnings?
I spend a lot of time in airports. You obviously listen to a lot of op-eds and editorials that are written with opinions, but at the same time, you also interact a lot with the practitioners. Take, for example, competition. I chair the competition commission in Brunei. There's a lot of resource within the region that will either help you from a training perspective, or you can engage with them to learn about specifics under the law, and also having knowledge of the law, right? It's more reading as opposed to practice. So, by being able to acknowledge that bit, then how is it applied? I think it's just a habit that I've developed over the years.
Hafimi, I heard travels, I heard networks. So shifting gears a little bit, talk to me about your partnership with your husband.
So, like I said, I've been married for 23 years, but we've been in a relationship 5 years prior to. So we've known each other for more than half our lives. I think it's essentially three very simple things. I like things in trees. It makes it easy to explain. Going into the relationship with all eyes open, understanding where each person, stands, acceptance of the fact that travel is part and parcel of what I do. And as they, for lack of a corny statement, as they always say, right? Absence makes the heart grow stronger. So that seems to have worked so far. You appreciate the times that you're together. If I were to speak to people who are starting in relationships, is you make the most of the times that you are together, especially when you're somebody that is, on the road a lot. And I think that works for us. And we have a very good communication strategy between the two of us. So our son, we sent him to boarding school. And that sort of managed itself in a way. But at the same time, having the key moments in boarding school also allowed us to do a better bonding as a family. So I think we don't take for granted the time that we spend together. But at the same time, we also understand that people also need to lead their lives. And as partners and as a family, you don't have to be stuck to each other 24/7, 365 days a year. I think doing your own thing gives you, as they like to say these days, that's your me time. I think we've lived this for the longest time, as a couple and as a family.
So you said you have a unique communication strategy to ensure that you stay bonded. Talk to us about that strategy.
Oh, it's always a hello and a goodbye. It's oh, what are you doing today? It's usually just short notes during the day. It may seem fickle to people, but that enables that to happen. We try to travel together as when we can. We try to put aside at least one trip a year just for our family, but not necessarily having to go anywhere. It could be as simple as, my son's got uni and we'll just go over there for a week or so, spend time together just to be in one place all together at that particular point in time. We try to do that every year. Yeah.
Sure. So given your extensive travels, talk to me about, the different cultures you've experienced. Did you see any similarities or cultural shock that left a lasting impression on you?
Yeah. Like I said, I went away to school when I was very young. When I was 10, I went to school in New Zealand. My sister and I, we were the only probably two Asian kids in the whole school, let alone that particular neighborhood. I went to boarding school when I was 14. Again, I was a minority in a mostly Anglo-Saxon school. And, you learn to adapt very quickly. So when you say culture shock, and obviously the travels help, right? We had a company that was a travel agency. A lot of the time we just traveled, whether it was for holiday or whatever. I think some of the moments in life is just being able to explore and do stuff. I take it in stride. I don't really take it from a shock perspective. I think I'm exploring a new country for the first time because it's a new country. I just want to see what's there, and that's never stopped me from going to places. I think that's the
Sure.
adventurous side of you, right? Okay, never been there before. I've been to Russia several times. From the city part of Russia to the border towns of Russia, and this curiosity, this exploratory nature, was imprinted on me from a very young age. I think my first travel when I was like 2,
Mm,
yeah. So
mm.
from the age of 2, I guess. So I think that it's the ability to want to just go somewhere because you're there to learn and you're there to see what is there. So I don't really take culture shock in my whole, I wouldn't really use that when I go to new places.
Sure. I think I understand where you're coming from because when you've traveled so much, dealing with different cultures is something which comes very naturally to you. But did you notice any interesting similarities despite the different cultures?
Okay, coming from a perspective of, say, a parliamentarian, sort of put myself in that role. I think various countries or various parliamentarians take different approaches depending on the governing system of the country. We come from a monarchy, an absolute monarchy where the king has an ultimate say in what happens and what doesn't happen. But also there's also a lack of understanding that even though it's an absolute monarchy, it doesn't mean that he doesn't act under advisement. So a lot
Hmm.
of the time, what I found was that I had to explain to people, especially or legislators who come from more democratic institutions, that even despite it being a monarchy, there is a democratic process ingrained within the system. So that shed that level of similarity to other parliamentarians that we interact with at that particular point in time. So if I were to answer the question that you mentioned, the name of things is different, but
Hmm.
the underlying strategy, the underlying approach is always the same.
Hmm. Sure. As we approach the end of the conversation, Hafimi, love to hear from you any success stories or any impactful stories as a founding member of the Young Entrepreneurs Association and something which seems to be very close to your heart.
I think I mean, the only reason I was introduced to you is because you had a previous interview with Fatin. So I never met Fatin before in her entire life. And it was because of the Young Entrepreneurs Association that we became thick as thieves, as you would say, right? We were able to set up other organizations and develop a very good friendship. And it is that opportunity to help someone be better than what they thought that they could do. Okay. And I think that has been a very impactful experience for me in my life. Being able to forge very good working relationships with people that you don't normally come across on a day to day basis. Being able to learn about the aspirations of other young people, not just in Brunei, but in ASEAN, and maintaining those relationships even over, a decade or two. So that's one of these takeaways or impacts, as you would say, in the involvement in the Young Entrepreneur Association. With
Mhm.
regards to the role of being in the legislature over 5 years, I think it's that realization that, if you want to do something that would support a country or an organization, is you really need to roll your sleeves up and get your hands dirty, right? And if you didn't do that in an open manner and with a genuine manner, then it wouldn't work. In Brunei, we use this word ikhlas. Ikhlas means a genuineness for something, that you're doing this with your whole heart. I feel that as we sort of meander through life, you try and find what is your core purpose, your core value, your ultimate desire in life or life's achievements. And you really move through that because of experience, age, and I guess, maybe a time in your life that made you wake up. You get a lot of moments like this.
Interesting. So, what is your personal mantra, or what are your values that have guided your life thus far?
I guess, faith plays a very strong part of it. Also, having good trust in people, but also having a very core group of people that you can lean on when you need them the most. A lot of people say I have a lot of friends, but you can always count your true friends just on one hand. And you don't really need more than one hand of good friends because it just gets confusing if you have too many.
So, any parting thoughts for aspiring leaders as they transition into larger roles?
I would essentially say that leadership works for the moment that you're in. And not all leaders are created equal. And sometimes it is maybe easier to lead from behind as opposed to from the front. Because at least from behind, you're lifting people up, as opposed to from the front, you could look at it in a way that you're trying to pull people up to the level that you're trying to get ahead to. And I think for myself, if I were to say I was an accidental leader, I probably wouldn't, because there's always been a desire to want to do better than what we are.
Thank you very much, Hafimi, for sharing your perspectives and your life lessons.
Yeah, I owe thanks and gratitude to you as well, Emma, for giving me the opportunity. In everything that we do, we always approach things with the fact that we want to help people, we want to do better ourselves, and also we want to be good examples for our future generation. So thank you.
Thank you for being a part of this incredible journey with Atlanta Diaries. I have had the privilege of hosting guests who courageously shared their most vulnerable selves with me. And even if only a small segment of these conversations can champion the journey of one person, it will be worth each and every moment. And together, we know we can create an even greater impact. So I do have a humble request for you. If you found value in these episodes, please consider sharing the podcast with your friends, family, and on your social media. I would also love to hear your thoughts and will really appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review or rating. See you next week for another inspiring journey on Atlanta Diaries.